What if the last thing Carl Jung saw before he died wasn't a hallucination, but a symbol so profound, so timeless, it shattered everything we thought we knew about death? Because once you understand what Jung saw, you'll never look at the afterlife the same way again. Carl Jung wasn't just a psychologist. He was a soul explorer, a man who peered deeper into the human psyche than most of us dare, and came back with maps of the unconscious archetypes and the mysterious thing he called the self. But it was during his final days on the edge between life and death that he had a vision so powerful it changed everything he believed about the soul. And that's what we're going to uncover in this video. What exactly did he see? Why was he drawn to a temple, yet told he couldn't enter? And what does that moment say about your spiritual journey? About your transformation before and after death? Because maybe death isn't the end. Maybe it's not even a destination. Maybe it's a mirror, a final symbol that shows you how much of your true self you've actually awakened. In the next few minutes, you're going to discover what Jung saw, what it meant to him as a psychologist, a mystic, and a man facing the threshold of eternity, and why his vision still matters, especially now. So take a breath, settle in, and get ready to see death through the eyes of Carl Jung. In 1944, Carl Jung, by then one of the world's most influential psychologists, suffered a massive heart attack. But what happened in the hours and days that followed wasn't just a medical emergency. It was a doorway. While his physical body lay in a hospital bed struggling to survive, Jung found himself somewhere else entirely. He later described the experience not as a dream, not as a hallucination, but as something more real than waking life. He said it felt like his soul had left his body. There was no more attachment to his name, his profession, or even his identity. What he entered was something he could only describe as cosmic space, a vast, silent universe stretching endlessly in all directions. He floated high above the earth. Looking down, he saw our planet spinning silently in the blackness. He could see continents, oceans, storms brewing over entire regions, and yet he felt nothing but stillness. No fear, no urgency, no pain, only peace and perspective. He later wrote far below, "I saw the globe of the earth bathed in a gloriously blue light. I felt a great sense of relief, as if I were finally free of everything petty and unnecessary." But that was only the beginning. As he drifted farther into this strange, serene dimension, something appeared in the distance. It was a temple, a massive stone structure, ancient and sacred, standing alone in the void, glowing with a soft, golden hue. And Jung knew instantly this was not a temple built by human hands. This was a symbol something older than civilization itself, a gateway, maybe even a mirror to the soul. He felt himself being drawn to it, not out of curiosity, but out of recognition. It was like remembering a place he had once known long before this life. A sense of home, but on a spiritual level. As he approached the entrance, something remarkable happened. He saw a figure, an unseen presence standing at the threshold, and that presence told him, "You may not enter." He was stopped, gently but firmly, and in that moment he understood it wasn't time. His soul still had more work to do. He had not yet completed the process of becoming fully whole, what he called individuation. Now pause for a second. Think about what that means. Here's a man who spent his entire life studying the unconscious mind, decoding dreams, and guiding others towards self-realization. And even he, at the edge of death, was told, "You're not finished yet." It's a humbling thought. and also an empowering one. Because it means the journey doesn't stop with knowledge or with success or even with age. It continues into the very last moments of life and perhaps beyond. To Jung, that temple wasn't just a metaphor. It represented the totality of the self, the eternal unified being that lies beyond our ego, our personality, even our mortality. He described it as the place where all knowledge and truth converge. But also, the place where only the fully integrated soul may enter. And that was the turning point. Because Jung realized something profound: death wasn't the end of consciousness. It was a transition into a deeper layer of reality, a state in which the soul must face itself completely, without masks, roles, or excuses. And that's why he wasn't allowed inside. Not yet. He still had truths to integrate, wounds to confront, lessons to teach. So he was sent back. When Jung awoke days later back in his hospital bed, he felt forever changed, not just physically, but spiritually. He no longer feared death. He saw it as part of the soul's evolution, a moment of reckoning, of return, and of radical truth. He said that the hardest part wasn't leaving the temple. It was coming back to this world, knowing what he had seen, and realizing how few people would understand. But maybe you understand. Maybe something about that story echoes deep inside you. Have you ever felt like you were being drawn towards something greater, a symbol in a dream, a moment of overwhelming stillness, a vision that didn't make logical sense, but felt utterly real? Maybe that's your soul, whispering that there's more. So what was this temple that Carl Jung saw in his near-death vision? It wasn't just a building. It wasn't made of ordinary stone. It didn't exist in any physical place, at least not on this earth. No, this temple was something else, something ancient, something eternal. To Jung, it wasn't architecture. It was symbolism. Carl Jung later explained that the temple represented the ultimate center of the self, not the ego, not the conscious mind, but the self with a capital S, that deeper part of us that is untouched by fear status or name. The eternal soul, the inner wholeness that exists beyond all roles and identities. And this symbol, the temple, wasn't random. It was, in Jung's words, a mandala, a sacred shape of wholeness, a spiritual mirror reflecting everything he had ever been and everything he had yet to become. You see, for years, Jung had studied symbols from dreams, mythology, religion, across cultures. And time again, he found one consistent theme. Human beings are always drawn towards something greater, a center, a source, a place of return. That place is the self, and the journey toward it is what Jung called individuation. It's the process of becoming whole, not just successful, not just functional, but spiritually integrated. Facing your shadow, embracing your contradictions, letting go of who you think you should be, so you can finally become who you truly are. But here's the part that still gives me chills. In that vision, Jung wasn't allowed to enter the temple. Even after a lifetime of inner work of uncovering the unconscious, decoding archetypes, guiding patients through transformation, he still hadn't fully completed the journey. The presence that stopped him at the threshold didn't say, "You're not worthy." It said, "You're not ready." Let that sink in. If Carl Jung, the man who dedicated his entire life to exploring the soul, still had unfinished business at the door of the self, what does that say about the rest of us? And more importantly, what might it mean for you? But Jung's realization was profound. Death is not a full stop. It's not a punishment. It's a passage, a threshold. And on the other side of that threshold is the temple. But you can't fake your way in. You can't charm your way in. You must be whole. You must have faced your entire self. That's what individuation is about. And the temple is the symbol of what waits when the soul is ready to stand face to face with truth. No masks, no illusions. On to think about it. We spend so much of our lives avoiding the very things that help us grow: discomfort, shadow, silence. But Jung's experience reminds us the real work isn't out there. It's in here within the psyche. And the temple, that's not just some fantasy in the sky. It's a symbol etched into your unconscious. It's the sacred center of who you are. You don't have to die to find it. You just have to start walking toward it, one step of inner truth at a time. So let me ask you something. When you look at your life, are you moving closer to that inner temple? Or are you walking in circles, staying at the surface? Have you faced your shadow, your unloved parts, your hidden grief, the dreams you've buried? Because the closer you get to those things, the closer you get to that temple. And to Jung, this vision wasn't a warning. It was a gift, a revelation. He realized that death doesn't take you anywhere new. It reveals what you've already been building inside. Every thought, every insight, every act of self-honesty. It all constructs the temple or leaves it in ruin. So when the time comes, whether tomorrow or decades from now, and you stand at that threshold like Jung once did, will you be ready? No. Yes, you don't have to have all the answers, but you do need the courage to ask better questions. Like, who am I beneath my roles? What part of me am I still afraid to meet? What would it mean to live not just successfully, but soulfully? Because maybe the temple Jung saw wasn't a place you go when you die. Maybe it's a place you prepare for every day you truly live. What Jung saw next was unlike anything he had ever described before. And this part of his vision, quiet, wordless, almost beyond language, might hold the deepest truth of all. He found himself in a strange, in-between place. A place without time, without clocks, sunrises, or shadows. Just stillness. A kind of sacred pause where everything human seemed to dissolve. And within this silence, he saw them. Figures. Not people as we know them. No faces, no voices, but souls. Moving slowly, deliberately, as if preparing for something sacred. Jung later described these presences as beings of light, or perhaps shadows of who they once were. They didn't speak. They didn't look at him. But he could feel their presence, and somehow, he knew what they were doing. They were preparing for a ritual. But not a ritual of this world. Not one with candles or chants or robes. This was something far older. Something universal. A kind of initiation. And Jung wasn't there to join them. He was there to witness. And he said these souls were not restless or afraid. They moved with intention, as if each step mattered. Like they were walking toward something important, not in space, but in being. They were not personalities, not roles, not names. They were essence, pure distilled essence, the core of who they had become after letting go of everything they had once clung to in life. And this struck Jung deeply, because in that moment he realized what it meant to be free from identity. No more profession, no more expectations, no more Carl Jung as the world knew him. Just awareness. pure consciousness, unburdened. But he described the experience as one of complete relief, like finally dropping a heavy mask you didn't realize you'd been wearing your whole life. All the things we worked so hard to build, our name, our career, our reputation, they were gone. And it didn't feel like a loss. It felt like liberation. Now let me ask you something. What would remain if you stripped away everything the world knows about you? Not your job, not your achievements, not your titles, your followers, your image, just you. Would that version of you feel whole? Would it feel ready because what Jung saw wasn't just an abstract spiritual scene, it was a mirror, a powerful one, and it reflected something many of us avoid, the soul's naked truth. In psychological terms, Jung would have called this a dissolution of the persona. The persona is the mask we wear to function in society. We all have one, and most of us understandably confuse it with our identity. But the moment of death, or even a brush with death, has a way of burning that mask away, and when it's gone, what's left for Jung, what was left, was something incredibly beautiful. He said the space felt like a kind of cosmic womb, timeless, silent, holding all souls as they prepared to face the next step in their evolution. Not punishment, not judgment, but integration. He didn't see heaven. He didn't see hell. He didn't see gods or gates. He saw a process, a spiritual unfolding that didn't begin after death, but long before it. And in that place, he could finally feel what it meant to just be. No proving, no defending, no striving, just presence. And presence, Jung believed, was the doorway to ultimate truth. And here's the part that stays with me. Jung didn't describe this vision as something out there. He said this dimension, this sacred silence, was within us all along. Not a place we go to, but a state of being we remember. So maybe the real question isn't what happens after we die, but rather, are we living in a way that prepares us to meet that silence with peace? This experience reshaped Jung's life when he returned. Not because he feared death, but because he finally understood its language. A language not of words, but of symbols. The temple, the souls, the silence, each one a reflection of something inside us. A message from the unconscious saying, you are more than your name. You are more than your story. And you are becoming something eternal. So maybe the souls Jung saw weren't strangers. Maybe they were us, in some timeless state, waiting, preparing, not for an end, but for a beginning we've forgotten how to see. And then, just like that, Carl Jung opened his eyes. Not in the temple, not in the cosmic silence, but back in a hospital bed surrounded by the mundane sounds of human life. Footsteps in the hallway machines, humming nurses whispering. The world had returned, but he had not come back the same. Jung later wrote that waking up was not a relief. It was a burden. He had touched something infinite, something so profoundly peaceful, so utterly true, that returning to the ordinary world felt almost like exile. Can you imagine that being sent back? Not because you wanted to stay, but because something or someone decided your soul wasn't finished yet. Jung realized in that moment he hadn't died because he still had work to do. Deep, unfinished inner work. He hadn't completed his individuation. He hadn't yet delivered the full message that his soul had carried for decades. And now, he had to go back into the world and try somehow to share what couldn't be explained in words. That's what haunted him. Have you ever had a moment waking up from a dream or surviving something you shouldn't have and wondered, why am I still here? That question followed Jung, and his answer became his mission. He began to write again, but differently this time. Not just theories or case studies, but symbols, visions, dreams, and above all, the language of the soul. After that near-death experience, Jung's work took a profound turn. He dove deeper into the mystical. He explored more of what he called archetypes, universal patterns of the unconscious. He studied dreams not as random images, but as messages from the soul revealing what the ego could not see. He wrote about the shadow, the hidden parts of ourselves we avoid, the fears, desires, and truths buried deep beneath our masks. And he emphasized more than ever that our purpose in life isn't just survival or success. It's integration. Ever integration of all parts of the self, the conscious and the unconscious, the light and the shadow, the mask we wear and the truth we carry. This Jung believed was the soul's deepest work, and death was not the end of that work. It was a continuation, a transformation. And he said death is not the end. It is a deep transformation of the soul. It's not the closing of a story, but the turning of a page we've been writing all along. And in that transformation, we're not judged. We're not punished. We're not erased. We're revealed. Jung's return taught him that life isn't something to escape from. It's a sacred preparation for that moment when we stand at the threshold not of death, but of the self. And the question isn't, how long will I live? The question is, will I live in a way that makes me ready? Chat persarmadovganya. Now let me ask you, if you were shown the doors of your own soul today, would you be allowed to enter? Or would you be ready to face what's behind them? Not the version of you the world knows, but the version even you haven't fully met yet. That's the version Jung was being prepared to meet. And that's the version you are being called to become. This is why Jung returned not with fear, but with urgency. He had seen the symbols. He had stood in the stillness. He had felt what it meant to be free of ego and full of truth. And now he had to help others remember what we've forgotten. That life is more than motion, more than status, more than surviving. It's about becoming whole. Also, the temple was real, but it wasn't a place to go after death. It was a mirror, a reflection of the soul Jung had been shaping every day of his life. And now, he had to build that temple brick by brick, through dreams, through shadow work, through truth. And maybe so do we. Maybe you're here watching this video not by accident, but because something in you is stirring. Something in you is asking, what am I really building with my life? Because when the time comes, you won't take your titles with you. You won't take your regrets or trophies. You'll take what you've integrated, what you've faced, what you've healed, what you've become. So, what if Carl Jung didn't hallucinate? What if what he saw in those final moments wasn't just some flicker of brain activity, but a deep spiritual symbol, a glimpse into something far more eternal than we've been taught to believe, the glowing temple? The silent souls preparing for transformation. The voice that told him, not yet. These weren't just images. They were messages. Messages from the unconscious. Messages from the soul. Jung's vision invites us to rethink everything. Not just what we believe about death, but how we understand life. Because whether we realize it or not, we're all walking toward that temple. Every day, every decision, every inner conflict we face is part of our journey home. The real question isn't what happens after death. The real question is, are we living in a way that prepares us to face that moment with peace? Or regret living consciously, living truthfully, living as if the soul matters more than the mask? That's what Jung came back to tell us, that death is not the end, but the beginning of a profound transformation. So maybe the work begins now, in this lifetime, in the way we love, in the way we heal, in the way we choose honesty over illusion. Because the temple Jung saw, it's not just his, it's yours too, and how you live shapes whether you'll be ready when you reach its gates. If this video stirred something inside you, leave a comment below. What do you think Jung really saw? And if you're ready to explore more hidden truths about the soul, death, and awakening, subscribe to this channel because the journey doesn't end here. In fact, it might just be beginning.